Hey, bring me some tea now, demanded John. Hold on, I'm doing the dishes, she replied, trying to balance the plates in the sink. What is it? Stop that and bring me the tea quickly. Can't you follow my orders? John's tone grew impatient. But she hesitated, glancing at the pile of dishes waiting to be cleaned. What a useless wife you are, remarked her mother-in-law. Make me some sweet coffee, please. But there are so many dishes to do, she pleaded, feeling overwhelmed. Leave them for later. Just do what we say, useless wife, John's mother added sharply. As she stood there, torn between the demands of her husband, John, and her imposing mother-in-law, she couldn't help but feel trapped in their expectations. John lounged in the living room, engrossed in his phone, acting as if he owned the place. Meanwhile, my mother-in-law sat at the kitchen table, maliciously eyeing me while indulging in a cake she had taken from the fridge. She could have easily made her own coffee, but she seemed to relish bossing me around, finding pleasure in making demands. I'm Hannah, a 30-year-old working mother. I married at 25, had a child, and returned to work soon after. Currently, we live with my husband, our 4-year-old son, my mother-in-law, and my husband's parents in their house. We moved in with her because John insisted. He told me how devastated my mother-in-law was after my father-in-law passed away, saying she couldn't eat properly. Concerned, I hoped living together would lift her spirits. Strangely, her mood seemed to improve considerably once I arrived. Now, she seemed to delight in finding ways to dominate me, her eyes gleaming like a predator fixated on its prey. I used to worry about her well-being, but now I question if it was ever necessary. I've cooked meals that she never thanked me for, only to find them abandoned in the sink later. She frequently criticizes my cooking, complaining about the seasoning or how I prepare dishes. I've often wished she would just take care of her own meals, but it seems she has no interest in doing any housework herself. This stir-fry seems half-hearted. I can't eat this. Make it properly from scratch, she demanded. I'm busy and can only manage simple dishes, I replied, trying to keep calm. That's why I hate it when daughters-in-law talk back. I said, cook it from scratch. If you have so many complaints, why don't you cook? You're a good cook, aren't you? I retorted, frustrated. What are you saying? Why should I do housework when you're here? Have you lost your mind? No more than you, I muttered under my breath, feeling the tension rise between us. What's with that tone? You're so irritating. My mother-in-law snapped. When I retorted slightly, her face flushed red with anger. Concerned that her anger might affect her health, I decided to ignore her. After that, both my husband and mother-in-law's attitudes toward me began to change. Their arrogance gave way to silence. They stopped speaking to me altogether. Hey, have you brought your lunchbox out yet? I need to wash it, my mother-in-law called out. I acknowledged, trying to keep my composure. Hey, I'm talking to you. Please don't leave candy wrappers lying around. They'll attract bugs, she continued, her voice more insistent. I responded vaguely, sensing the shift in their behavior towards me. Are you even listening? She pressed. I muttered again, feeling increasingly isolated in my own home. They began to completely disregard me. I felt utterly depleted, like I was interacting with someone who couldn't comprehend anything I said. I questioned why I had to endure living with such a person, yet I couldn't bring myself to consider divorce. I believed our young son still needed his father. And so 5 years passed. Both my husband and I turned 35, and our son was now 9. My mother-in-law was 65. How much longer will I have to endure this kind of life? I feel invisible. It's as if my existence doesn't matter at all. I feel utterly absurd, I muttered to myself on my way home from work. At home, the only person who spoke to me was my son. If even he were to reject me, I feared I would truly become superfluous. I felt a profound sadness, as if I were deemed unnecessary in this world. Upon arriving home, I immediately began cooking. Everyone must be hungry, I thought, opting to prepare a spread of delicious Chinese dishes. I whipped up mapo tofu, crispy fried chicken, and a colorful stir-fry with bell peppers and sliced pork. However, John surprised me by requesting mayonnaise for his fried chicken. After what felt like an eternity of silence, he finally spoke up. Bring me the mayo. Sure, here you go, I replied, retrieving the mayonnaise from the fridge and handing it to him. His first words to me in a long while weren't a compliment on the meal or a thank you, but a simple demand. I felt increasingly frustrated. Then my mother-in-law turned to me with a malicious expression. Clean the toilet, she ordered, her tone cutting through the air with disdain. What? Clean the toilet right now, my mother-in-law demanded abruptly. I'll do it later. Please don't bring that up while we're eating. It's unpleasant, I replied, trying to keep my composure. What? Her voice hardened. Just like your heart. What? You really know how to get under my skin, don't you? I retorted. My mother-in-law erupted in anger, pushing her dishes aside and storming back to her room, screaming in frustration. I couldn't fathom why she had the audacity to demand to clean the toilet during a meal. It seemed like she just wanted to antagonize me. Didn't she find it distasteful and inappropriate to bring up such things during dinner? If she were reasonable, she wouldn't have said it at all. When I pushed back a little, my mother-in-law became angry, prompting my husband to intervene and demanded apology. What the hell are you saying to my mom? Apologize, he insisted. No, why should I? I retorted, bewildered. So, after 5 years, that's all you have to say. His tone was accusatory. You think you are? I'm your husband, so don't talk back, he asserted firmly. Oh, so now you care about being a husband, I scoffed. If I had been treated better, maybe I would have acted more like a wife should. But you've ignored me all along. Why did you do that? Because of your attitude. I thought you needed to be taught a lesson, John replied defensively. I see. It doesn't matter to me, I replied coolly. Hey, where do you think you're going? I've lost my appetite. I'm going back to my room, John declared, pushing his plate away. I finished my meal in silence and quickly retreated to my room. Ever since our relationship with John had grown cold, we'd been sleeping in separate bedrooms. I opened my laptop and accessed divorce papers online. It's amazing how convenient it is these days. You don't even need to go to the courthouse. I swiftly filled them out and placed them in front of John. Hey, I'm going to file these, I announced firmly. Oh, what's this? John exclaimed, surprised. As you can see, they're divorce papers, I replied calmly. Wait, divorce? Are you serious? John appeared flustered, his disbelief evident. I remained composed. John might have assumed he'd never face divorce papers, but I had reached my limit. Living in the same house with my in-laws had become unbearable. Even if we moved out, I doubted our relationship could improve. He showed no signs of changing, and I couldn't muster the confidence to keep trying. Why are you suddenly bringing up divorce? This isn't like you, John questioned, struggling to comprehend the situation. You always took me for granted and ignored me, didn't you? I've reached my limit. I don't see any reason to stay with you anymore, so I want to end it, I asserted firmly. What? Are you saying you're going to leave me? I don't know what to say, John responded, visibly taken aback. At that time, John was unemployed. He had previously worked in a corporate job but had been fired due to multiple issues. Despite his efforts to find new employment, he seemed to have lost his motivation. It felt like I was the one supporting him financially. John used to boast about providing for me and our child, especially during my maternity leave. However, it was just that, a leave, not unemployment. His superiority complex often injured me. I funded our baby's needs like clothes and formula from my own savings, and it seemed like he didn't care about our child at all. John used to be so arrogant, but now that he's unemployed and dependent on me for support, leaving would create difficulties, especially since his mother, my mother-in-law, isn't receiving any pension. His father, who was self-employed, apparently avoided paying into a pension fund, leaving them ineligible for survivors' benefits. Despite being 65, he hasn't received any old age pension because his father considered it a waste. But didn't you anticipate this trouble when he wasn't contributing to his pension? What do you plan to do, leaving us in this situation? John questioned anxiously. I'll live with our son, just the two of us. It's simpler that way, I replied calmly. I won't allow it. Please give me custody. You're unemployed now. You can't support him without working. I've been the one supporting this household, but I want to be with Jacob. Just give me custody, John insisted. Don't act so righteous when you've never truly cared about Jacob, I countered, feeling the weight of the situation pressing down on us. While we argued, my mother-in-law emerged from her bedroom, her voice rising in anger. Who do you think you are? You're so selfish. Don't you have any desire to contribute to this household? She accused. No, I don't, I retorted defiantly. Don't talk back, you're just a daughter-in-law. If you leave, how are we supposed to manage? She continued, her frustration evident. Why don't you ask your boyfriend to lend you some money? I countered sharply. What? Her expression turned to shock. You're seeing Mr. Brown from 3 houses down, aren't you? He's wealthy, lives in a mansion, and even has housekeepers, I stated boldly. How do you know that? Her tone was a mix of disbelief and apprehension. I saw you and Mr. Brown the other day, holding hands, enjoying a date. You both disappeared into the busy downtown area. You even did something quite inappropriate, I said, holding up my phone. What? She stammered, her face paling. Can I show this to his wife? She would be furious, I pressed, revealing the photo I had taken. Stop it. Her anger flared as she saw the image. My mother-in-law was having an affair with Mr. Brown, a wealthy man from our neighborhood who lived in a mansion with several housekeepers. His wife was a refined, lovely lady. I'm certain his wife would explode if she saw this photo. Even the most seemingly gentle wife wouldn't stay silent upon discovering her husband was dating a neighbor. Both Mr. Brown and my mother-in-law are in their 60s. It seems my mother-in-law approached him because of his wealth. Can you believe I was ordered to clean the toilet while eating by such a despicable person? I vented. Well, look who's talking. Someone who's so dirty could use a mealtime bathroom cleaning. I guess I'll have to inform his wife now, she retorted with a sneer. Stop it, I exclaimed. Oh, sorry. I actually already told her, she confessed. What? I gasped, shocked by her audacity. I have her email address, you know. She's a yoga teacher, right? I attended one of her classes and we exchanged emails. Actually, I've already sent the photo, I declared. No, my mother-in-law exclaimed in horror. Yes, shortly after, Mr. Brown's wife arrived. She was a graceful elderly woman, her cheeks usually pale, but now flushed bright red with anger. You've been seeing my husband, she accused my mother-in-law. That's, Hannah told me how despicable you are. My mother-in-law attempted to defend herself. But I was lonely, she pleaded, her voice tinged with desperation. I don't care about your circumstances. I'm furious. While I'm divorcing my husband, you were also to blame. Reflect on your actions, Mr. Brown's wife declared sternly. It's all this daughter-in-law's fault. If she had just... My mother-in-law's voice cracked with tears or sniffles, but Mr. Brown's wife remained unforgiving. I felt a pang of sympathy seeing my mother-in-law crying and slumped at the entrance, but I knew this wasn't the time for sympathy. If I show kindness now, she'll only become arrogant again and repeat the same mistakes. Look at what your actions have done. Mom is in a terrible situation because of you, Hannah interjected, her tone apologetic yet firm. I'm not the one who should apologize. I won't, my mother-in-law retorted defiantly. You insolent woman, apologize this instant, Hannah demanded. I refuse, her mother-in-law shot back stubbornly. Amidst our argument, Mr. Brown's wife intervened, addressing me directly. Hannah, you're planning to leave your husband, aren't you? Yes, because I've been treated terribly all this time, I replied, my frustration evident. In that case, you should proceed decisively. Your husband, he's involved with our young maid, she disclosed calmly. What? I exclaimed in disbelief. I saw them today. Your husband and our maid were holding hands, behaving inappropriately on the street, she continued, her tone resolute. What are you saying? Believe it or not, my foolish husband John was having an affair with one of the maids from the Browns' house. They had several maids working for them, but he got involved with the youngest one, and it seems things had become quite intimate, I recounted bitterly. I was already considering divorce due to his mistreatment and neglect of me. Now, on top of everything, his infidelity had been exposed, I continued, feeling a surge of anger. At this point, I felt there was no option left but to bring him down. He was someone I once loved, but now he's nothing more than a burden to me. A man like him is no role model for our child, I reflected bitterly. Why didn't I decide to divorce him sooner? I deeply regret it, but there's no point in crying over spilled milk now. You're the worst, John. I will never forgive you. You need to pay child support. Wait a minute, I'm unemployed, John protested weakly. So what? You still have some savings, don't you? You can use that to pay child support, I insisted. If I do that, I'll be left with nothing. Are you really okay with me ending up on the streets? John pleaded. We're parting ways, so whatever happens to you is no longer my concern, I retorted coldly. You're heartless. After treating me so coldly all this time, you have the nerve to say that. I don't care anymore. I'm leaving, I declared, immediately starting to pack with my son. Staying in that house any longer felt like it would drive me insane, so I decided to return to my parents' house. John attempted to stop me, but I ignored him. Regardless of his protests, I was determined to go through with the divorce. In the end, he refused to sign the divorce papers, leading to a contentious legal battle. Eventually, the court recognized his responsibilities and he was ordered to pay damages. I also pursued child support, which he managed to pay off in a lump sum. Apparently, he borrowed the money to settle it, I concluded. As a result, my vindictive mother-in-law was sued for damages by Mrs. Brown. With no pension or other income, she reluctantly took up part-time work to pay off her debts. For someone who had never worked and spent her days idling at home, the transition to labor was a significant challenge for my mother-in-law. She started with cleaning jobs, often receiving reprimands from her coworkers for slacking off. Her second job at a cash register brought sarcastic comments from young college students, a role she had never experienced before. Having previously lived a leisurely life without contributing to her husband's business, she was now facing the harsh realities of society firsthand. Meanwhile, I moved back to my parents' home for a while, but later found a great apartment near my office and decided to move there. It's a comfortable living arrangement for me and my son, with nothing to complain about. I asked my son if he missed his father, but he simply replied, "Not at all." It made me realize that divorcing him sooner might have spared our son from negative influences. Moving forward, I'm committed to working hard in every aspect of life to ensure my son never has to endure hardships.